my understanding of mysticism, whether it's Jewish mysticism or any other type of mysticism, is that it involves kind of merging yourself with the divine. And from my understanding of mysticism and the results, the practical results of mysticism are that the more people concentrate on merging themselves with the divine, the less use they are and the less effect they have and the less change they make on this world. So I'm a guy who's very much interested in this world rather than the next world, very interested in the here and now, and it seems to me that the more people lose themselves in the mysticism that you were just talking about, the less use they are for what's going on now.
Well, I think whenever a person loses themselves in mysticism, they're not involved in what we would call Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism. You know, what's unique about Jewish mysticism is it always turns us back to the world. But the motion, if you will, you know, the rhythm of Jewish mysticism is what's called ratzo v'shov. It literally means running and returning, and it comes from the description of the chariot, right? In the prophet, where it says the chayot, the animals in the chariot, ratzo v'shov, were running and returning. But what it means always in Hasidic literature is that you actually move towards merging, towards aligning with God. Then you take that alignment and bring it back to the world in order to heal and repair the world. Then you move again and run towards the divine. Then you take it again, right, and kind of bring it back to heal and repair, right, and fix the world. And so the image is, of course, is kind of you align. You align. From the place of alignment, you heal, repair, engage the world. You then realign, then you heal, repair again. It's a perpetual spiral of running, aligning with the divine, right, and then coming back to the world. And actually, in Judaism, one of the great sins is to run towards the divine and not to return to the world.
Right.
Which is actually precisely what you're saying, Levi.
Right.
That's what you're saying. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, huh? I mean, you know, one of the things that modern science, you know, teaches us in physics is what they call the elegance of the model. You know, sometimes you know the truth of something just by its sheer beauty. You know, in other words, the beauty of this, you know, the elegance of it, you know, is one of, not the only, but one of the indications of its deep, you know, and profound truth. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful way to live. You know, it's a very deep way to live. It's a profoundly meaningful, you know, way to live. And of course, it assumes, you know, all of the moral, ethical, you know, axioms of living. You know, but it emerges from them and makes them real in the world in a very, very beautiful way. And it's, all of this doesn't make a person into a mensch. And that is into a, you know, not a perfect being. You know, we're all flawed. We all fail. We all fall, and then we rise again. You know, but it makes a person into a person whose basic, you know, disposition in the world, the basic way they be in the world, is to be good, is to be kind, and is to be honest, to have integrity, to support, to build. You know, not to destroy, not to rip down. You know, to really be in deep integrity in the world. You know, that's what all this needs to produce. You know, it doesn't produce a person secluded on a hill in the Himalayas or in Sfat, in Safed in Israel. You know, it produces a person, hopefully, who engages the world fully, but from a place in which, and here's the key, here's the absolute key of the whole thing. I mean, everything we said today is beautiful, but this is actually, I'd say, the thing that's by far most important. It moves a person to engage the world not from a place of ego. Right? And if I engage the world from a place of ego, it means I experience myself as a separate self, and I've got to defend myself against all the people trying to kill me. Right? You know, that I actually don't, in my heart, feel my connection to other people. You know, I'm a separate self. I'm me, they're them. I got to defend myself from their encroachment, from their attack, and I don't actually genuinely feel their pain or their joy. You know, and that's the place I live from. That, Levi, is where most people live from. Right? Spiritual practice, mitzvot, is all about not living from that place. It's all about opening myself up to a deeper sanity, to a deeper knowledge of the nature of reality, from which I actually experience that I'm part of a larger whole, that I actually experience a genuine, you know, love, you know, for the world, which moves me to act ethically, which moves me to, you know, to act in integrity. And, you know, as long as a person's basically driven by their separate sense, self, ego, right, you know, they can follow all the rules they want. In the end, the rules break down. You know, and that's why this is so important. It's so important because it actually creates, ultimately, it's the way to create a more ethical world. Not the only way. It's not the whole story, but it's a critical piece of the story.
Right. It's a way of deepening the bonds between people, and pretty much your happiness level is going to be largely based on the quality of your relationships.
No, that's right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's the best way to say it. So it's a way of deepening, if I can just use your words, deepening the bonds between people. Right? It's deepening because the bonds between people then become more than just pragmatic, more than just don't be an island because you'll die if you're in social isolation. No, it's you actually experience the truth of the bonds, that we really actually are connected. Now, you don't experience it every second, right? Let me just say something really clearly. A person who every second experiences their full connection with another person is insane, right? And it's not something you can experience every second. That actually becomes psychotic, right? Now, you actually have to experience yourself, first off, as a healthy, separate person, right, who's individuated, to borrow the psychological term, from other people. You have to first start with a healthy, separate sense self, what we call an individuated ego in psychology. Only when you have a strong, healthy, not fractured, but a healthy, separate, individuated ego, can you then go deeper and begin to experience a deeper reality that actually your ego is actually more porous than you thought, that the walls, you remember Pink Floyd and the Wall, right? Yeah. The wall is actually less solid than you thought. It's actually much more permeable, right? There's actually much more exchange, and that actually you're actually in a much deeper way. You actually have much deeper bonds with other people that are actually a reflection of a deeper reality. But here's the deal. You can't skip steps, right? So you can't be like, a 17-year-old who's actually never done spiritual practice and just, feeling a little bad one day, and the world's kind of a little oppressive, so let me take an acid trip, and I'll dissolve the walls between me and the world. That's a spiritual bypass. You know what I'm saying? That's a bypass. When you can't bypass. You have to always go in order when you go up a ladder. If you actually skip a couple of rungs of the ladder, you fall off the whole ladder. So you have to develop your healthy, separate ego sense, right? So a lot of psychosis or borderline personalities are people who haven't developed a healthy ego sense. But then you don't want to reify. It means you don't want to solidify your separate ego sense. Right? You want to actually hold it in a healthy way, and then, without ever losing it, but actually begin to open yourself up to experience the deeper bonds between you and the world in a way that you actually experience that reality and open yourself up, open your heart up. In the end, you have two choices. You either live with a closed heart or with an open heart. And the world can beat you up. Listen, I've experienced the world beating me up once or twice. I know a little bit about it, right? And I have a choice. I can either close my heart and become kind of bitter and egoic, or I can kind of, do what I need to do to defend myself, because that's a healthy, normal thing to do. Not to do so is pathological, right? But then, just relax into God, into myself being part of the larger divine field, and relax to the deeper reality and truth of the connections that, that connect us deeply, right? And so here's a funny thing. I'll tell you a funny thing. Just the other day, I wrote, you were talking before about sex and eros, and maybe this is a good place to end. Just the other day, I wrote a friend of mine, just a note, because I was actually just feeling a warm feeling towards them. So he wrote me back, as a guy, right? And he wrote me back, the guy, he said, boy, I only get notes from people I had sex with, right? So that friend of mine associated that feeling with the sexual, right? But actually, the whole point of the book Mystery of Love is no. That feeling is actually not associated merely with the sexual. It's associated with a core relationship between people that has nothing to do with the sexual. And that's actually what love is. So that's a great conversation, my friend.
Okay, great. Let me press a couple of buttons.